Hello Neverwinter. Here is my new trial build. I'm going to call it the Celestial Shackle Breaker Build. Before we get into it, do me a favour, just hit that subscribe button if you've been watching a few of these videos. It would help me out quite a lot. And throw a like in as well, if you wouldn't mind. Okay, so the previous build for this trial that I created was mainly focused on non-celestial gear. This new build has been tuned to within an inch of its life. It does rely on and assume that it's going to be a full trial group running each of the support companions that are available. So that would be a Portobello, a Tutor, a Flapjack, an Etrian, a Blue Fire Eye. There is a little bit of overcapping in places and a slight bit of undercapping on the accuracy, but I think it looks pretty good. So to start off, I will show the actual rotation that I usually use, since that came up last time in the video, or rather in the comments. So I go through an initial rotation, pop the RD, go back down and around. This is a somewhat simplified rotation compared to the last one, and there is potential to squeeze more out of it, but it's quite difficult to effectively animation cancel in the trial because of how laggy it seems to get just under any conditions, even without a bard in there. So, full disclosure, I use a PlayStation Edge controller, so I have a lot more control over the animation cancelling since I've got the shadow slip linked to one of the back pedals. So it just gives me, I don't need to press down the movement button as I'm trying to animation cancel, which gives me a lot less accidents or slip-ups, as I'm sure anyone who's tried to cancel with the actual movement stick would be aware. It can get a little bit awkward. Oh, that was, it's slightly wrong. You'd usually pop your RE and then do the rotation, but hey ho. Okay, now these mythic boots are still a little bit temperamental, so you want to make sure that you're doing a full, like, 5 big hit rotation before you actually go into hitting with your mount, to make sure that everything's propped in from those boots. Incidentally, the legendary version is still more reliable. But what this new build gets us is basically, well, not 0 wasted stats, but we're capping everything apart from accuracy, and we have managed to slot several pieces of celestial gear as well as the void touch weapons, incidentally. Just need to switch a little thing around. And for anyone wondering, this is about the 43rd variation of this I've used, or been testing with and developing. Okay. So as you can see, when we get all of our supporting comp stats in, and when we get our auras in, everything's going to be pretty much capped. We might even be slightly over capped on crit strike. Obviously we get somewhere in the region of 28% power just from the raptors and then all of the support companions, and you know, whatever sort of forte buffs the other supports may or may not be giving you, but we don't tend to rely on that. 16% I think from the companions for the combat advantage, 10% from the new shirt from the master trial, new pants from the master trial, and obviously quite a lot of crit strike from stuff like the Etrian and the blue fire eye. Okay, gear wise, new celestial helm, crown of the Everscourge. The reason why this is preferable, even though it gives less combat advantage than the other one, is that this one is just flat, you know, 7%. You don't need to wait for it to ramp up, and it's consistent. If you die, you're revived, you have 7% combat advantage, right? Whereas with the other one, if you happen to die, you got to wait another, God knows how long. Was it like a minute for that to fully proc in? It's not ideal, basically. Plus an extra 1350 item level. That's good stuff, man. Same neck and waist set. It'd be nice if we could get some update of this, but 7.5% accuracy. Nice bump to recharge speed as well. Incidentally, that's also why you need to be careful on the timing of your mount power. So it needs to come at the end of a 3 encounter cycle in order to get that last 2.5% accuracy. Rings. Haha. I got very lucky with these rings. Obviously, these cost an absolute fortune at the minute. I think the Bloodlit Veil's around 8 to 10 mil on PlayStation at least. I think this one's fluctuating between 15 and 20 mil. These are currently probably the most powerful rings in the game, stat-wise. Obviously, in the previous build, we were running this damage ring. We could certainly work this into a build, but I don't know. That's something I'll think about. But yeah, for now, Bloodlit Veil, Twisted Pack, incredibly strong rings. I'm surprised they don't have a set bonus actually. A lot of the rings from previous trials and previous dungeons have had a set bonus, which has been quite nice, but hey ho. Now, this one is going to be probably a controversial one. I've had several people telling me that Warlocks can't slot this chest, but here is my proof that we can slot it. Although their argument was we can't slot it because there's too much wasted stats, we've got too much crit strike, and to be fair, we might have a little bit too much crit strike, but we can certainly slot it without ending up with massive amounts of wastage. Obviously, previously, it will have been this accuracy combat advantage chest, which, to be fair, does have much better like stats on it from the ratings. The actual ratings on this chest piece are pretty abysmal, to be honest. But besides that, this is 13% like attack stats. and got the 4% crit, 4% power, 5% accuracy. That's some good stuff. Accuracy can be quite hard to come by on the Warlock. Yeah, I did try. I looked at a build with this Bulwark of the Eternal Zul'Karite, but that one I certainly couldn't slot. Just couldn't find the accuracy really. None of the stats quite worked with the crit save one. Might be quite good on a healer. Who knows? These arms and that helm are probably the two best DPS items in the game currently, besides the rings. This is again 12% stats, 8% accuracy, 4% combo advantage, just flat. Plus, you get those really useful ratings as well. Yeah, priority in this dungeon is arms, and then the hat. You don't really. Most people would not worry about the chest piece. There's ways around the chest piece, right? In fact, it's kind of difficult to work the build to put this in there. So priority, arms, hat. Now, here's one that may or may not be controversial, but we have managed to slot the Void Touch pack blades in here. Void Touch weapons, these come from Master Imperial Citadel. And the point of putting these in, if you look at the bonus in here, when in target with a single opponent, you gain a stack of Dark Light. The DPS variant of this is plus 0.6 base damage boost, up to 10 stacks, 6% base damage boost. Now, if you watch my tank videos, you'll know that I've tried to explain the difference between reduction in incoming damage and damage resistance. It's like they are completely different things. And it's the same with damage boost and base damage boost. So your base damage boost is increasing the value that your stats and everything then acts upon. Whereas increasing damage is just adding into the bucket of things that are already increasing your damage. So base damage boost has a significantly higher impact than an additional damage boost, if that makes sense. If not, please say so in the comments and I will try to explain it further. So especially in this trial, that incoming damage is useful, but the most important thing is that base damage boost, which gives a sort of outsized boost compared to other things. Plus, I think these are some of the highest actual plus damage ones that we've got. Now, obviously, the alternative would be the new Curse Breaker More weapons. Now, these are good weapons, especially if you can maintain that distance away from the target. And the movement speed is actually very useful in this dungeon as well. And you get the additional 2k item level plus the damage. So the void weapons and these weapons are not like a million miles apart. You don't need to try and sort of contort yourself into using the void weapons, but the void weapons are slightly better generally. Another reason why you might want to run these curse breakers over the void is that obviously that void touch less useful downstairs because you'll start losing your dark light stacks as you're surrounded by those enemies, and then they take time to regenerate again once you're up top. So this one might come down to personal choice, but you would have to rework a few things if you take the void touch down. I've got the crystal in here. That's you'll be lucky if you're allowed to run the crystal, basically. But we've got enough flexibility here that we can slot in a different artifact and then just adjust. This is the damage shirt, same as the last build. There's no cooldown on this, so it, or at least the way it's described here, you can just infinitely proc it and never lose the bonus. I don't know if that's the way it actually works. I haven't actually tested that, but that's what this seems to imply. And obviously by running 2 of these, we get the set bonus, which is an extra 2% combat advantage. So that means we're getting 12% combat advantage between these pants and this set. If you happen to have a ridiculous overabundance of combat advantage already, then these are the other best pants in the game. That's an outrageous amount of AP to be given just on doing combat advantage damage. I actually run these, my current tank debuff build is running these along with the AP chest, and it is obscene how fast I can get the AP back on that thing at the minute. Anyway, so the rest of these are just for stats. Chances, you might get a chance to run a Night Flame, you might get a chance to run a Crystal. Chances are you're going to have to slot something else, right? Beacon, Marcos, Demo, whatever. And then you can adjust these, maybe adjust some insignias as needed. So these boots, apparently they're taking a look at these boots. So I'll explain the issue. The problem with these boots is that the individual stacks don't refresh. So if you do this much damage to proc all of these, you proc all 5 at the same time, then they will drop off all at the same time, and you'd have to do another 5 rotation with enough damage to proc all 5 stacks again. Which is why my stats seemed a bit weird as we were checking before. So it's perfectly fine in an article because you will be doing that rotation, you will be doing enough damage, and you will proc it all at once. But if you go into it with a couple of if you go into it with like a couple of awkward stacks, or an awkward set of timings on the stacks, you could end up with like however much less, you know, like 1 less proc on it than you were expecting when you do your mount power. So they are awkward, but they are being worked on. So the only reason we're actually wearing these is for that 2% crit severity, really. So if you don't mind giving up your 2% crit severity, you could probably run these other ones because they are considerably more consistent. But that's up to you. Obviously these mythic versions are from Master, and then the legendary versions are from Advanced. So yeah, that's the equipment. Enchants, full set of Amethyst. The reason why we're in defense, as I said last time, is because this dungeon is almost entirely a defense and HP thing. I noticed on the tank, like I'm currently running a full debuff set on the tank. Very little awareness, hardly what I would like my defensive stats to look like on the tank. I think it's only got about 105 defense, 70 crit avoid, and it's doing better than fine. Like plenty of deathless runs on it. Very weird how they've got this dungeon set up, to be honest. But whatever. Okay, so Sword Coast Tacticians. We're running this for the combat advantage. We are technically overcapped on our power, but given the unreliability of the boots, I don't mind being a little bit overcapped on power. These are quite cheap at the minute, so I'd recommend stocking up on them if you're planning on running this build. We've got Rage of Flames here. Incidentally, if you want to turbo boost your damage, where the hell is it? There's a new set of Fey enchantments which are doing pretty crazy additional damage. I'm not sure where they are. They might be on the tongue. But yeah, they only last for an hour. They're expensive as hell, and I'm not spending that much just to get an extra 100 mil on a bloody DPS board, to be perfectly honest. Celestial Lightning Flash. Still best DPS enchant in the game. Can't beat those stats. Great source of accuracy. So I switched from the movement speed to the recharge bonus here. Now, if you're not very good at jumping, you might want to keep the movement bonus on, because that movement bonus affects your movement speed in the air as well. So when you jump up and you move, an extra 18% movement speed can be the difference between just catching the edge of something and falling straight through the middle. When I first switched into this build, exactly that happened to me. It was quite embarrassing. Okay, there we go. Equipment. Now, I had a few people asking some questions about this particular setup and why and wherefore, so I'll try to go into it a bit more this time. Now, Vampiric Embrace. Actually, no, let's start higher. Dark Helix. This is currently the highest single spark generator. If you're not at will cancelling, this will get you the most sparks in the shortest amount of time. Now, Hellish Rebuke, on the other hand, is still much more at will cancelable than Dark Helix. You're much more likely to just straight up cancel out the effect of the Dark Helix than you are to cancel out the effect of the Hellish Rebuke. So here's Hellish Rebuke, animation cancel, and if you get this sequence right, you can see fantastic spark generation, but it does do a lot less damage. Dark Helix, on the other hand, can be very awkward to properly animation cancel. This goes doubly so in the trial because of the aforementioned lag that seems to come out of nowhere. I think Bards are kind of the major culprit, but I think Warlocks actually make it quite bad themselves by animation cancelling. Not entirely sure. It needs a bit of an optimization pass, I think, personally. Right, so Vampiric Embrace. If you activate this power whilst your target is cursed, it will heal your entire health bar. That is the most useful thing about this. It does also happen to be a relatively high magnitude attack. So, you know, bonus. Given the way we've got our feet set up, we need Hadar's Grasp to summon our Soul Puppet. The Soul Puppet does a lot of damage, but it is also incredibly unreliable, incredibly inconsistent, and generally a bit of a pain in the ass, okay? It's like if you keep this feat on that keeps the Soul Puppet summoned 100% of the time, this Soul Puppet has incredibly bad pathing and AI, and it can get stuck behind things. If you zone into that dungeon and your Soul Puppet is up 100% of the time, and it's got stuck behind something in the entrance, and it doesn't follow you into the dungeon, then you've just got no soul puppet, right? um, so well, that's why I personally don't run this, but yeah. So Hador's Grasp summons the soul puppet, important, and Killing Flames is just our highest magnitude thing that we've got. We want to be hitting that button as often as we can. It doesn't mention it here, but it has the additional effect of actually applying curse, which is why that rotation is the way that it is, with Killing Flames in the middle. So you apply your curse, Hador's to summon the puppet, Killing Flames, Vampiric Embrace, and that way you've hit it each time whilst it's cursed. I mean, ideally, Hador's Grasp, Curse, then Killing Flames, and then Vampiric, just to make sure that you're maximising the damage potential there. But again, very laggy dungeon. It can be difficult to fully optimally perform a rotation. I've said before, I'll say again, I'm not actually the best player of the Warlock. I've just been playing it for a long time. Know a trick or two. There are significantly better Warlocks than me out there, playstyle wise. Tyrannical Curse is still our best daily, bar none. Put Flames Felagos in there. Just if it's getting very dicey downstairs on some of the bosses and you happen to have your daily up, that can just stop you from losing a few people when the execution goes on. Yeah, but Tyrannical Curse is going to be the main thing. Another important thing about Tyrannical Curse is that it's not just about increasing your own damage, it's that passing the damage on to the other targets within 30 foot. This will kill balls. If you cast it on the boss and there's balls around, the balls will just die from the splash damage. It's also what happens downstairs. If the boss is surrounded by mobs, you cast your daily on it, do a rotation, throw your warhorse or toad or whatever, and it will just melt all of the mobs around as well. It is very powerful in a AoE situation, or where you've got additional sort of mobs that need killing. So this might be a controversial choice given the comments I have had in the past. So interesting thing about Deadly Curse and why it's preferable over Dust to Dust. Sometimes, so this Dust to Dust, as far as I'm aware, goes into the same damage increase bucket as all your other damage increases. So when it says 5%, it's actually effectively more like 2%, 1%, depending on how much damage you've actually got stacked. Whereas Deadly Curse is a 25 magnitude damage. You know, that's just boom, flat. And it has the additional benefit, it procs even if you mess up your animation cancel. And it generates a few extra sparks. So Deadly Curse actually gives you the ability to generate more sparks. It covers your backside a bit if you fail to time your at will cancel correctly. And given how, as I previously said, how incredibly inconsistent the Soul Puppet is, it's a much more reliable source of additional spark generation than Dark Prowse. Even though I know last time I recommended this one, I now say try this one. Right. more potentially controversial choices. Double Scorch. Soul Scorch used to just be something that we tapped to reset our powers. It did absolutely no damage. It was pretty useless, to be perfectly honest. But I mean, it didn't do no damage, but it was nowhere near the damage that it does these days. So if you get those Soul Scorches going on inside the arty window, it's basically an additional encounter, but it's now probably our highest magnitude, or at least it's in line with Killing Flames, if not higher, when you've got a full set of sparks, especially with the Double Scorch. It is ferociously powerful. And since we're doing the sequence the way that we are, with Hadar's Grasp, Power in the Nine Hells becomes redundant. Now this is one that this is one that got flagged up in the last video. Part in Blasphemy versus Warlock's Curse. So they are actually they are relatively close, okay? It's not like one is significantly superior to the other. But in this trial, you'll probably get better results from Part in Blasphemy. Part of the reason for that is that we have two Curse Consume abilities running. Both this one and this one Curse Consume. So, whilst we can, we can start throwing at-wills in between doing these things to make sure that the curse is up. But when you're trying to spam as many encounters as you can in such a short time frame, you're not going to want to stop to at-will. Which means you've got every chance of going through your rotation. You end on a vampiric embrace. You do a Soul Scorch. You throw your mount. There's no curse on the bloody thing, right? So you're losing 15% damage straight off. So if you have the discipline to be able to constantly apply that curse, then power to you. But this one, on the other hand, whenever the curse is removed from the target, you can be a lot more consistent, right? So you can do your sequence. You can have your at-will, your Hadar's Grasp, takes the curse off. Your Killing Flames puts the curse back on. Your Vampiric Embrace takes the curse off. And then you do your Owlbear, you do your mount, and you haven't lost any damage from not having the curse applied, but you have got your additional hits from the Part in Blasphemy. At the end of the day, it comes down to a sort of playstyle thing, I suppose, but that is the reasoning behind it. Yeah, so I explain. Some people absolutely swear by this bottom one here, but as I just explained, that Soul Puppet is not reliable. It's not a reliable ally, okay? That's why I run the risky investment. So the problem with Executioner's Gift, as has always been the problem with Executioner's Gift, is by the time you get the maximum sort of potential out of Executioner's Gift, the bosses, or whatever the target is usually practically dead, which is the nature of the thing, right? But Creeping Death, that's always doing the same amount of damage. Executioner's Gift, same problem as with Dust to Dust. goes into a damage bucket that is already saturated by our other plus damage things. So creep and death, generally superior in most situations. And, well, if you've been Warlocking a while, then you know. This is the difference between a Warlock playing like a Warlock and a Warlock playing like a Wizard, basically. The entire sort of playstyle of the Warlock is dependent upon you being able to reset your cooldowns with Soul Scorch. I haven't really experimented with the other path, so if there's Warlocks out there using it, having a good time, let me know. Is it basically the same as a Wizard, just with lower cooldowns, or what? I would like to know. Okay, that's the power set. Boons. Now, if you've been playing for a while, you might have quite a few boons. Bottom ones, it's just all the offensive ones. Movement speed. Movement speed is one of the most powerful things in this game. It is you can get out of danger, you can chase mobs. It's definitely something that you want. Yeah, so I put undead on this. Because why not? Basically, there was a point where I thought that the boss might be undead, because it does kind of look undead, and it is sort of I don't know. Doesn't matter. Not a big deal. I'm avoiding the health boosts because extra health on DPS just makes things hard to proc generally, like those boots, for example. And of course we've got the lingering medicine here, which can proc off hellstones and is very useful when it does proc, especially on the tank, but also on the DPS. Yeah, recharge and action points are probably the important thing here. Forte is quite nice, but 4% Forte only gives you like 2% power, 1% crit strike. Yeah, it's not wildly important. Bloodlust, definitely want to put this one on. Helps the AP come back quicker. Now these two proc quite a lot. They don't. You won't necessarily know. Well, you won't necessarily see them proc, but they do seem to proc a lot more than what the little tooltip indicates. You can't underestimate how important that heal is. And in fact, this extra bit of damage it's noticeable, you know. And when that reduced damage hits, it's incredibly nice. Blessed Advantage. Yeah, this. So this does proc in with power, but it's not procking in often enough for it to be a reliable addition to the build. So you might see when I'm showing off stats, sometimes it looks 6% higher, but it's not reliable. You want your stats to be fully capping at the point where you throw your mount power. Basically, that's the sort of function of that's the function of an article. That's the function of the way that we play things. You need to have your maximum damage potential within the artifact window. It's nice if you've got it outside of it as well, but it's the arty window that really counts. Critical severity. And once again, defense, because it's a defense trial. It just is. Now, if you are incredibly confident in your abilities, you can switch res sickness off here and run movement speed. Up to you. Like I say, the main issue is that it's not even it's not the mechanics or anything. It's just that dungeon can just randomly lag out so hard that you know with the best will in the world, you can play as well as you like, and then you just get a massive lag spike and you're dead. But it. Whatever you feel. Okay. Now I wouldn't usually be running Drits. Obviously, whoever's creating your queue is going to put you on whatever they want you to be on. Some notable good choices for DPS are the Tutor and the Scorpion. We wouldn't want to be running the Etrian on Artoon because unfortunately there appears to be a bit of a bug where the person who's actually summoned the Etrian doesn't get the additional stats, which hopefully they'll address at some point. Flapjack's not too bad. He's a bit of a mid-range sort of DPS capable thing. Some of the worst ones to run, unfortunately, are the Portobello, the Dritz himself, the Rothe, also a bad one. But run what you have to. Don't kick off too much about it. We've got the Raptor in, Minsk, Neverwinter Night, Bateri, and okay, a lot of my testing has been around Celestial Lion versus Vicious Direwolf. And to be perfectly honest, I'm still not entirely sure. The Vicious Direwolf has a lot of consistency. Obviously, if you read the Celestial Alliance, it's actually relying on your companion to use a power, and then it has a 50% chance to apply this to you. So if you're running one of the companions that hits particularly slow, and they use a power, and it's the 50% and it doesn't activate, then you've got to wait a lot more time for it to then activate, right? It's that's not an issue that you'd have if you were running the Vicious Direwolf. So it's very companion dependent. Yeah, I'm still of two minds about that one. But for now, either or basically, they're both similar in equivalence, is what I'm saying. Celestial Line would probably just sort of slightly beat it if you're incredibly good. Like if it happens to activate during an article and you're someone who can get off, say, 9 to 12 encounters within the arty window and within the Celestial Line window, the Celestial Line will blow the water out of the Vicious Direwolf. If you're not, you might have a better time with the Vicious Direwolf. Keen Eyes on here. I really don't like these ones with a chance on hit to activate. Seems to be up relatively often though, as you saw before. It's just kind of disappointing. Or it can be disappointing if you suddenly look like you've lost 10% damage. It's probably because this hasn't procced in when you needed it to. This companion gear is from Mount Hot now. I have not bothered to invest in this new gear. This was a lucky drop actually, but what they've done with this companion gear is pretty stupid, to be perfectly honest. It's so, I mean, at least without any other way to get it, it's just ridiculously scarce. Yeah, I'm not a fan of what they've done with this. But at least, I suppose, at least they're not charging stupid amounts of AD for it as well. That's another thing that annoys me. For an additional 400 item level, there's no way in hell it is worth spending millions of AD for this, okay? Basically, absolute insanity. Alright, mount powers, mount equips. So this is also an area where I've been observing and tweaking and lots of various combinations I've been trying to do. So the main reason that we need to keep have executioners on here is for the critical severity and the accuracy. We could probably rework this, switch a few things out, switch a few things around. Like we could take that power off, put it into crit serve. Take that crit strike off, put it into crit serve. And then maybe find a bit of accuracy from somewhere. Yeah, I don't think this is 100% necessary to run. If we weren't running this, you'd probably switch to either Warlords or Artificer's Enticement. Which can just help you get an extra couple of encounters off. Or if you're running something like the Scorpion, 12% more damage on the Scorpion is actually quite useful. 12% more damage on something like a Dritz, absolutely not useful. So, you know, however you fancy it. It's only Hador's Grasp we've got that procs this, but we are sort of spamming Hador's Grasp quite a lot, so, you know, it's a not insignificant amount of extra damage. You could take it off, try, again, Artificers or Warlords. Now, I'm of two minds actually whether to switch one of these Tacticians out for Artificers and then just have an extra couple of Soul Scorchers in my rotation. That's something I may need to think about. But anyway, the current reason for having two Tacticians is that after that initial encounter rotation, pop your daily, boom, instant encounter reset. Well, apart from Hador's Grasp. And then that gives you the opportunity to get another encounter set off within the arty window. Mount Power, Owl, Soul Scorch, encounter rotation again. Which is obviously aided by the cavalry haste because you do the encounter rotation, pop the mounts, you're halfway to a reset encounter rotation. Yeah, so there we go. They said it could not be done. They said we could not slot this, but we have slotted it. We have created the Celestial Shackle Breaker build. If you're still watching at this point, thank you very much. If you liked the video, please leave a like. If you like a lot of videos, please subscribe. I'm tempted to show off my tank debuff build, but the stacks are just so jacked that I think people will probably shout at me in the comments. But if you want to see that one, just let me know. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you next time.